I'm going to kick off the discussion talking about something that I did. Uh, I didn't realize I was doing it, but apparently, in the eyes of many people, I called one of my oldest friends racist. And I didn't mean to. That wasn't what I was implying, as I'll talk about later. But it has certainly been an eye-opening experience for me. And it was really, really tough for me to hear how my comments were perceived as calling the other person racist. And I think that's part of what makes it hard for us to have the kind of genuine discussions that will lead our society toward a solution. See, a friend I had for over 10 years commented how much she loved my son on a post I made about how the recent racial tensions were affecting him. I was really taken aback by her comment because one of the very last in-person conversations that we had about my son was where she told me that her roommate felt threatened by having this scary black man sleeping on her living room couch. I realized two things that day. One, I realized that my friend and her roommate were shorter than me, and it never occurred to me until then that my son was growing up and he was taller than them. He wasn't the guy he is now who stands up here and looks down and says, "Hey, Mom." His voice hadn't changed. He was still shorter than me, but he was taller than them. And I didn't realize how threatening that could be to them, right? I also realized that day it didn't matter if our friendship was restored. I could never let my son stay there again. I honestly, at the time, didn't actually believe that the roommate had made those comments about my son. Both of these ladies, like me, tend to get mixed up when super anxious. And in the moment, I thought she really meant I thought that if the roommate did say that she was really referring to the neighbor man who was actually kind of creepy, and he happened to be black. They kept his son for him when he went on his military trips, the same way they kept my son when I went on my military trips. So in the moment, I thought that they were talking about it so much that they kind of got it mixed up, because it's really, really stressful. You know, when you make a promise to somebody and you're trying to figure out how to get out of that promise because it's just too much for you. And I don't know why we as people can't just say, you know what, I promised I would help you for the next 2 years, but I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't know why that's so hard for us. It's not hard for me, but that might be why I don't have so many friends. But our society in general, we don't like these uncomfortable moments. And so I figured that's what it was. Now, before you judge what I'm saying, I want you to think about in your own life, how many times were you 100% convinced you knew the story, you remembered the details perfectly, only to have pictures or video or something else come up that later showed you mixed up some of the details, right? Like many, you'd rehearse the details so many times in your mind or talking to friends that you were 100% sure you were correct, but you weren't, right? So either way, I gave grace to my friend, and like she commented on the theme, I meant it when I said I was over it and we could move forward. Again, at the moment, I thought that she was really referring to the other guy and just got it mixed up. But either way, I knew my days of my son staying there while I was on work trips were over. Even if the friendship was smooth, the way she described my son meant that I couldn't have him there anymore. The conversation also required me to reevaluate the friendship. And I'd already noticed that my old group of friends was kind of cutting me out of events. You know, they would only invite me to things when I already had plans. And then they were like genuinely surprised when I would go en route to wherever my plans were and I would make a side detour so I could say hi. Because I mean, you invited me, right? It always seemed to surprise people. And, you know, I'm a little dense sometimes. I'm a very loyal person. And, you know, it didn't connect with me that they were trying to cut me out until I noticed a couple times they could have invited me when I had nothing on the calendar, but they didn't, right? So yeah, you know, I'm a little dense that way. I guess I always believe the best in people, right? I had also noticed that the group was increasingly homogenous. It was no longer the multicultural, multi-generational group that we had 10 years ago when I lived here the first time. Now, I actually didn't think it was racially driven at that time, okay? In fact, I thought it was because I was seeking greater personal growth and greater accountability in my life. And few of the people in my old circle really were. And I thought that perhaps we were just kind of growing apart that way. Now, have you ever done that? Have you ever kind of held on to the past, not realizing that things have changed? That's kind of where I was. I didn't want to admit that the only time that most of the friends in that group only reached out to me to catch up was always accompanied by an ask. Hey, can you support my new business? Hey, can you come to my party and bring a gift? You do this for me. Hey, can you do that for me? The person who said they would, I know I told you originally you couldn't do this, but the person who was going to do it backed out and now I need your help, right? Like in my mind, I justified it because especially with this particular friend, she was a very good friend to me for years when I was a jerk. I mean, really, I didn't realize I was a jerk, but I can look back on it and be like, ooh, I was jerky, all right? She had done a lot of good for me. And if it wasn't for her, quite frankly, I wouldn't be where I am today. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have the professional success that I have today. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have the ministry success that I have today. She invited more people to my church than I did when we first got started. And she wasn't even a member, right? I figured she was just going through a phase and things would eventually settle out and our friendship would be more of the give and take that it used to be. I didn't want to realize that I no longer fit into her world. So with that conversation that day, where she didn't just describe my son as a kid, but described him as a Black kid, I realized my friendship was never going to be restored the way I wanted it to. And there was no sense in hanging on to hurt and frustration, which is why she posted. I thought we were over all that. I didn't think to get her exact words before I started this, so I'm paraphrasing. But I was over it. Because see, I'm the kind of person that I'm over it when there's nothing I can do to change it. Some people used to laugh at me because when I was in love with a guy, oh, I was just in love with the guy. But when I found out that he wasn't attracted to me, done. Like I wasn't going to waste my time, my energy, or my emotion on people that I can't make headway with. And when you describe my son as Black rather than as a kid, I know that there's something going on in your subconscious, even if you don't realize it. And I truly believe this particular friend didn't realize it. Because again, she was very good to me, even when I wasn't good to her early in our friendship. And every once in a while, you know, life holds up a mirror and it says, did you realize this about yourself? And we have to acknowledge it. If we pretend that these disappointing parts of ourselves don't exist, then we're never going to be able to grow beyond them. In fact, look at the sign behind me. It says, what does it say? It says, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And every time I have been challenged in who I am and what I do, it's caused me to grow. That's why I'm not so much of a jerk anymore. And that's also why I felt the need to address her comment on the post about my Black boy feeling the weight of the world hating on Black boys. Okay, so address that. Now let's address why I didn't just make my comments to her privately. Because that would have been the nice thing to do, right? I mean, that's even what the Bible says to do. As a pastor, I know this, the Bible says, bring it to them privately. If they don't address it, bring it through a small group. If they still don't address it, broadcast their sin and hopefully they'll repent, right? Like that's the biblical process. Unfortunately, this friend, like me ever since the car accident, you know, I have more compassion on this now because it's been one of my things since the car accident that I'm asking the Lord to heal me from. Kind of has an unreliable memory during times of stress, okay? This is a friend who told everybody I said she should euthanize her dog to save money. And it was actually a mutual friend of ours that said that, but I didn't challenge it because she had already had enough grief over the death of her dog, right? This is also the friend who said I lied to get into the hospital and pray for another mutual friend. And as a holiness pastor, I take great issue with anyone saying I purposely lied about anything. But when I peeled back the onion on that, it appeared to be a misunderstanding. Now, this was also the friend who made someone else the admin of my Facebook group because she let this third-party person that we didn't even really know before all this convince her that I couldn't handle it. when I begin to put all this stuff together, like it's not really that great of a friendship, right? But the thing is I didn't really trust what I said behind closed doors was going to have any weight with her because of these kinds of things. And you might ask yourself, JJ, are you a glutton for punishment? Are you stupid? Why would you be friends with someone like this? Well, look, y'all, I got a busted up memories myself since the car accident. If I don't write it down or record it, you know, it may have happened, it may not. And I don't put a whole lot of, I'm not going to hold somebody's feet to the fire over a fault I have sometimes too. I mean, I tend to be hot-headed and I tend to vent feelings that other people disagree. And if you're going to be my friend, despite that personality, like I got the black girl and I got the Italian girl, right? So I got it on both sides. If you're still my friend after all that and you have forgiven me for all the times I've gone off on you, I'm going to be loyal. All right. So I looked at all those things as isolated events over the last couple of years. And when I weighed them over 10, 11 years of good friendship and kindness and all the things this person's done for me, I wasn't going to just throw that away over a wayward comment that she didn't even realize she said. Okay, so as many people who make comments about blacks don't realize what they're saying, but still in their heart don't realize that what they're saying could be offensive because in their heart, they don't think of themselves as racist. And honestly, for those of you who are watching who feel like people might be calling you racist about things that you don't think you're racist because you have black friends, right? If we point it out all day, okay, if we point it out every single time that somebody said something that really was offensive to a person of color, look, almost all coworkers, school moms, proprietors, vendors would hate us. And before you say, well, then shop black, hang out with only black folk, remember, I'm a product of an interracial marriage and I'm married to a white man. It's incredibly rare in Shreveport, Bossier City to find black people who don't talk bad about whites and vice versa. Okay, it's like that old meme. If I required everybody in my life to live by my standards and my calling with the Lord, the calling to holiness that I have, I would totally be alone. So instead, I choose to be tolerant and forgiving. I choose to meet people where they are and help them move forward if I can. All right. And it was in the spirit of tolerance and forgiveness that I made that comment. I wasn't trying to call my friend racist. I was simply pointing out that even she had undertones of behavior that contributed to the overall problem. See, you don't realize it sometimes, but the attitudes you have contribute to the overall problem, even if you're a good person, even if you think you're not racist. And I'm talking about both sides here. Because remember, I get it from both sides. All right. I expected my friend to react the same way I did when my coworker told me, don't you ever call people Oriental again. Things are Oriental, people are Asian. Now, at the moment that she told me that, in my heart, I didn't understand. I really kind of didn't understand what the difference was, but I accepted her opinion as an Asian person. And if it was offensive to my friend, who isn't really my friend anymore, but at the time she was, if it was important to her, then it was important to me. I don't have to understand why the Confederate flag offends you. All I have to know is it offends you, and I'm not going to shove it in your face, right? And I thought by pointing this out, my friend would gain similar revelation. After all, had my friend told me that her roommate said she couldn't handle having this young man in her house, that would be a different situation. But she specifically described him as a black man. And that makes all the difference. Again, I wasn't trying to accuse anyone of being racist. I certainly wasn't trying to lose half my friends that used to be my friends when I lived here because of this incident. But you know what? This whole thing has shown me, if you're going to unfriend me over that, it shows me how easily these racist dialogues and beliefs can be perpetuated. The racist dialogues and subconscious beliefs can be perpetuated by good-hearted people who don't even realize what they are saying or doing. And then when you point it out, take great offense, which means they are still part of the problem. Now, since making that comment, I have learned that this is one of the greatest resistances that we have right now to affecting change. You see, if I tell you don't call people Oriental, you could choose to accept it and say, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Or you could dig your heels in and say, how dare you? I'm not a racist. I have Asian friends. The books call people Orientals. This movie calls people Orientals. They use that term in their music. They call themselves Oriental. Many people are choosing to get offended. How dare you call me a racist? And they cling to the good I've done. Oh, I've helped so many Black kids, so many Black mothers, so many Black fill in the blank, rather than get real honest and open about what is going on. So let's have this conversation, y'all. Why is it not acceptable to say, I have Black friends? Do you even want to hear that? Or do you just want to hide behind the fact that you have Black friends sometimes? I mean, sometimes. You don't date them, but you have them. Why do the social groups here tend to segregate themselves as they get older? I didn't see it like that when I was stationed in other places. I saw it like that in Montgomery, Alabama, and I see it like that here in Shreveport, Louisiana. Why does that happen? Here you go. Why won't white women nanny for Black women? Why is it so hard for military members to acknowledge that my hair doesn't grow like theirs, and at least be willing to be aware that it takes either 3 hours of pressing every time I wash my hair, or a ton of chemicals that burn out my scalp and cause early hair loss simply to be considered professional looking? Why can't we acknowledge that if all lives matter? Why can't you acknowledge my struggle? What is it about my struggle that bothers you so much? What is it? What is it about the fact that my hair doesn't grow like yours and I have to go through great lengths to even be considered serious to make my hair look like yours? Now, I'm so thankful. I'm not going to get on a hair rant, but I am going to do a mini hair rant because I'm so grateful that today we have all the natural hairstyles. And I've been natural for 15 years. I was natural before it was cool, y'all, but I choose to wear my hair straightened out because I got like 5 different kinds of curl pattern, and my natural curls just don't look good. So when I want to look natural, I put on a wig. But even if I went to work, if I tried to wear my normal hair that grows out of my head, I would be considered unprofessional. Why can't we acknowledge that? Why can't people who don't have that problem look at somebody who does have that problem and say, sister, I applaud you for doing what you have to do to get by. And I look forward to the day where you could wear the hair that comes out of your hair the way it comes out of your head and be considered professional. That day is approaching. We are almost there. Why? Let's not just talk about Black folk, y'all. Why can't we acknowledge what this nation did to Native Americans? Why? Why can't we acknowledge our history? Why do we get so offended? I think, now this is just me, I would love for you guys to join in the conversation. Let me check the Zoom yet and see if there's anybody. I don't see anybody on the Zoom, so I'm just going to keep talking about this, okay? But I think part of the reason why we shy away from these discussions is because we realize that if we took a good look in the mirror, we'll see just how much of the problem we really are. We'll realize that we are part of the problem, and then that's just too much for us to bear. Or we'll realize that we profited from these mistakes of our ancestors, and we're afraid by acknowledging it that we're somehow admitting guilt or committing ourselves to doing something about it. Now, look, I know what other people are saying, but I'm not asking you to give up your family, land, or wealth. I'm asking you to understand that people that look like me have a harder time acquiring our own land and wealth, not because of incompetence, but because of decades of policies and attitudes that cause us to have to work 10 times harder to get what we want. I'm not asking you to let criminals go or to support terrorists. And if you tell me, don't you come on my page talking about Black Lives Matter is all terrorists, because I marched in Black Lives Matter when I was living in DC, and there weren't a terrorist amongst the bunch. Now, there are a couple people now that are getting frustrated and capitalizing, but when I moved here and I heard how it was being portrayed, I said, oh, these people are believing what they want to believe. But let's just take that out of the equation. We're going to take that little rant out of the equation, all right? I'm not asking you to support criminals. I'm not asking you to support terrorists. I'm asking you to acknowledge that you have many videos of white people assaulting cops and nothing happened to them, but very few of Black people, because the videos we have of Black people in far less transgressions show them getting killed or beaten with unnecessary force. I'm not asking you to divert resources for search and rescue for your little blonde-haired baby girl. I'm simply asking you to acknowledge that there is a disparity when white rapists miss out on prison because, oh, we don't want to mar his bright future. But a black child walking through a neighborhood gets killed for looking suspicious, and nobody cares. I'm asking you to acknowledge that black babies cost almost 50% less to adopt than white babies, which says something about the value of life in this country, about people who look like me. Why should I cost 50% less to adopt than my white sister? You tell me. Let's talk about it. You don't want to talk about it because you don't want to acknowledge it. Because if you don't have to acknowledge it, then you don't have to do anything about it. And I'm not even asking you to give up your money. I'm not asking you to give up your security. I'm not asking you to move to the hood. I'm not asking you to vote for fill in the blank, right? All I'm asking you to do is do some research with an open heart and an open mind. Why are crimes against black women aren't taken seriously? And for that matter, why isn't black women's health taken seriously? Well, that's a whole nother video. We need to talk about that, y'all. I'm not asking you to pay more in taxes to help welfare mamas get more entitlements. I'm asking you to take the time to research the system and understand that, first of all, there's more white people on welfare than there are black people, and then take a look at the reason behind why is the system the way it is. I guarantee you the system isn't the way it is because of the entitlement of the people. It's rather the greed of those who are profiting from the system. You dig behind and you follow the money, then you'll see why we have such a hard time getting people off of welfare. And this one's going to be a little controversial, but I'm not saying you can't have your statues. You want to have a statue? I'm okay with you having your statue. How about you have your statue on private land? How about you do some research as to why those statues actually exist? Did you know that most of these statues we're all arguing over were erected to protest against emancipation and or school integration? Yeah, when I was in Virginia, most of the ones we were arguing over there, guess when they were built? 1960s. Why do you think that is? I'm asking you to be open to that. Now, I'm also asking you to stop being a part of the problem. Stop burying your head in the sand, stop hiding behind your platitudes, and really open up your eyes to what is going on all around you. Because I believe if we all take the personal responsibility to stop being part of the problem, and I believe this is on both sides. I believe that black people, white people, brown people, every people on the brownness spectrum needs to take personal responsibility for their role in the problem. All right. If we will take that personal responsibility to stop being a part of the problem, and we will take the motive and the intent to start being part of this solution, then this problem will eventually go away. Now, I'm going to share with you later, not tonight, maybe tomorrow, how I was part of the problem. And I've had to think about this really long and hard because I grew up overseas and I didn't understand really what it meant to be black in America for a long time. So I was absolutely 100% part of the problem. And I hope you'll join me for that. For now, I want to see if we've got anybody with some good comments. And if not, we're going to close out. But I want to thank you, those of you who've been watching. I want to thank you for watching. For those of you who have sent me things for the discussion, I'm still editing it. It's just so overwhelming. I start editing and then I start crying. And y'all know me, I'm a scientist by trade. I don't handle emotion very well. So it's just been very, very slow to me. And then one video leads to the next video and one name leads to the next name. And there's so many names. I don't know that I'm even going to have time in this lifetime to actually upload all the footage and all the research that I'm compiling, but I'm certainly going to try. Thank you again for being here. Y'all take care and be blessed.